my podcast, Shake Some Dust. We're back, and tonight we're in the Mojave Desert, about half an hour south of Needles, California. Decided to leave Lake Havasu for various reasons, and probably going to talk about some of them tonight. It's a quiet night, and so far I feel a little bit more isolated than I have at all on this trip. So it's kind of weird. I'm the furthest out that I've been so far, and in a weird way, this whole time I haven't felt lonely hardly ever. But this time, tonight, gosh, it just kind of feels like I'm just so far out and distant. I don't know if it's just exhaustion from having the people for the last couple of days, or if it's just everything is kind of coming into focus and I'm starting to think about things and it's starting to weigh heavy on my head. It's December 30th. We have one more day left of 2023. It's hard to believe it flew by this fast. So many changes in the last year. It's been incredible. Penny is in bed right now. You might be able to hear her snoring. Of course, she stopped snoring because I said her name. Anyway, I wanted to start off tonight by introducing a affiliate that I have. It's Booking.com. So if you're sick of sitting around in the winter weather and watching the white stuff fall out of the sky and shoveling the walk for the 37th time, take a vacation. Go to Booking.com. I've got a link in my description down below, and I work with them as an affiliate. So if you click on the link and it'll take you to Booking.com, you'll be able to book your trip, and I will get a little bit of support from them for basically introducing you to the service. I've used Booking.com many times. I find that it's actually one of the best, more reliable ways to get accommodations just about any place you go. Went to the Pacific Northwest coast a couple of years ago, and I used Booking for every place that I went. It gets you the cheapest prices on hotels, and it tells you what you're looking for. So basically, if you're traveling with pets, you can drill down and say, hey, I've got a yellow lab that sheds like a mammer jammer, and I'm going to find all the hotels in the area that accept dogs. Booking.com lets you do that. I like the service, and I liked it before the possibility of being an affiliate with them. So check them out. Check out the link in the description. And as they say, let's get into it. I was in Lake Havasu a couple of days. Actually, I was in the Lake Havasu for over a week. I got there before Christmas, and it was a nice change from Quartzsite. I don't know if I've talked a little bit about Quartzsite or not, but I think I will mention a couple of the things that I didn't like about it. It was beautiful out there. The rocks have that desert varnish. I talked about that the last time. There's these bluffs. The sun sets forever. A sunset can last an hour out there. The only problem is it's just out in the desert. And other than seeing cactus, there's not really much else to do out there. You go into town and they gouge the heck out of you. I don't think I paid less than $15 for a meal. I would have to drive about 15 minutes west to the nearest rest stop to get water. And I would do that probably about once a week. So I decided one day I was going to go up and see what was in Lake Havasu, because I always wanted to see the London Bridge. And I always thought that was just cool that they have the London Bridge out there. Somebody moved it stone by stone, as they told us in history class, and they numbered all the stones. And I even got pictures of some of the numbers that were on it. And I thought it was pretty cool. And it was lit up for Christmas time. It was beautiful. They had lights that change colors. They go from green to red, alternate colors. And it was just very beautiful. Penny and I did the river walk. I probably mentioned that last time. Havasu was nice because they had all sorts of normal amenities, like restaurants that were affordable. We went to In-N-Out Burger as soon as we got into town. I fed the grackles French fries. The grackles crack me up. They're these funny little birds that look like starlings, only they kind of have like an orange tinge to them, black and orange. And they make all sorts of goofy sounds, and they will swarm you if they see you have food. That was a lot of fun. They had the aquatic center. They don't have an aquatic center anywhere near Quartzsite, so I was always showering outside the bus. That kind of loses its charm after a couple of weeks, and I didn't have a real shower for over a month when I was in Quartzsite. I hit Havasu, and I showered 2 days in a row, and it was $5 per to use the shower. And it felt amazing. I could actually feel the grime coming off my body. And they had a hot tub that you could sit around the hot tub, more like a whirlpool. As the days went by over in Craggy Wash, it started to fill up with a lot of campers. One of the groups of campers that came by were a couple on e-bikes. They were friendly. I talked with them as they were scouting out a spot. Then they rolled in with an RV. Apparently they had ridden their e-bikes all the way down from Montana and gone through, Washington, Oregon, California, and then cut back over into Arizona. It was a whole expedition that they were doing, and it was pretty cool. I won't get into all of the details here right now, but what I will say is they were very social, and once they were camped out, they would come by and visit, which is fine for most people. For me, it kind of wore me out, especially since I had deadlines that I had to work on. They brought me cookies for Christmas, which was awesome. And then the other night, they invited me over for steaks, which I thought was pretty cool. The bummer is the more that you learn about people, sometimes the less you wanted to know about people. I don't know. Maybe I am becoming a hermit out here in the desert. But I can tell you that when they get the familiarity to just ride up on you, like I was trying to work and everything else like that, and then I would hear Penny bark and I would hear the tires roll up, and the guy, he was always coming by, and he would talk at me for about an hour or two per time. And that would just mentally and physically and emotionally exhaust me. It was like my buckets were not getting filled. So after some drama that they went through that I learned all about last night at their grill out, it wasn't their grill out, it was just his grill out, I decided I was going to leave camp. And so I just packed everything up last night. I had everything buttoned down, ready to go when I blasted off, and I left Havasu, where I left my site, at about 8:30 this morning. Went into town, ran some errands, did some laundry, got water for the bus, did all the things that I needed to do in town, and I had an interest in heading out to the Mojave Desert, which is where I am today. I went up through Needles, California, through Interstate 40, and the area out here is just beautiful. I like everything about it, but there's something about California that's really changed in the last several years since I was here last. And I kind of delved into this a little bit when I went to Blythe. Mostly it was just kind of like, it was hard to explain. It was almost like a shadow kind of hangs over the whole area. When I got into Needles, it was crazy because gasoline was over $6 a gallon. Diesel was over $7 a gallon. And the town was empty. And I thought, well, of course nobody's driving around. Nobody can afford to friggin' drive. But the town was empty. The only people that I saw out had this beaten, disheveled look about them, and saw a couple of guys that were obviously on fentanyl wandering around. The whole place just seemed completely oppressed. And I think a lot of that is the political climate that's happening in California and a lot of places in the world right now. I had a boss, I don't know if I talked about this before, but I had a boss that was, he was into psychology. I think that was his doctorate that he got, was in psychology. And he told us that if you get a rat down 30% of its body weight, you can train it to do anything. And I have a feeling that that's kind of what they're doing out here in California. It's just kind of funny that gasoline prices are jacked up and everybody has a gasoline vehicle. They've built the entire infrastructure of the state around roads and gasoline and cars. It's a car culture. If you look at LA, it's the embodiment of a car culture. But nobody can afford to drive. So, who lives out here in California, or used to? Good old Elon Musk with his electric cars. And I think somehow he's pulled a great big old P.T. Barnum kind of thing. Or the Music Man, I don't know, and he's told everybody how bad gasoline cars are and how great these electric cars are. And I thought about that with the people with the e-bikes, because they're hauling around giant batteries just to charge their e-bikes and then plugging them into walls in hotels to make sure that they can actually run their bikes. The whole thing just seems counterintuitive. And it really puts people that can't afford to get these, $40,000 to $60,000 electric vehicles, they're stuck. They can't go anyplace. So one of the things I will say about California is at least the roads aren't very packed out here in the eastern part, and the Wi-Fi signal is great. It's like I've got 5G out in the middle of nowhere. That's why I'm recording all this stuff and doing all this work catch up tonight. I had no signal at all, hardly in Havasu, but now I've got 5G, 4 or 5 bars of 5G out here in the desert. So I'm getting some work done. It's crazy to think, though, that they would just rather have people at home, probably ordering crap off Amazon and sitting at home, or chuck some fentanyl at somebody, and then they're really not a problem. All they do is sleep all day long. We just live in a crazy world, and I have a theory anymore that the world actually ended a couple of years ago, and we're just now catching up. It's like when you chop a tree down, sure, the tree is green, but it's just as dead. And I think that that's kind of what we're looking at out here. And I hate to sound pessimistic about the whole thing for this grand road trip, but I'm just kind of telling things how I see them and as they come. And I see a disparity of wealth out here. I see people driving $2 million pusher campers, and I see people living in a Honda Accord with tarps over the window so they don't cook in the middle of the day. And I don't know, I gotta say, the whole thing is crazy, and it does not seem like it's headed in a good direction at all. So tonight I just kind of wanted to be brief and talk about that stuff a little bit, and just kind of, make a little bit of connection. If anybody listens to this and they hear the sound of my voice, I want you to know that I'm learning all sorts of things out here. I am thinking about life. I'm thinking about the direction my life is headed, and I'm thinking a lot about where I need to go and how I need to steer things. It is an experience like no other out here, and a lot of people tell me that I'm living the dream, and I am to a degree, but also there's that diseased part of my brain. I say that with the utmost of sarcasm. It's the writer part of my brain that has to take this stuff in and has to process it and has to make sense of a lot of it. And I think one of the reasons that I did get worn out so much by my neighbors is because they did a lot of talking, and they did a lot of talking at me, but they didn't really listen, and they didn't really contribute to a conversation. Everything, it almost seemed like they were going off on a script. And what was funny was when I would talk to either of them, it seemed like a conversation of sorts, kind of one way. But then when we were around other people, like at the cookout, it was the same stuff. It was almost like verbatim the same stuff. And I thought, gosh, it's kind of like a rerun. I've already heard all of this stuff before. And for me, I was just kind of like, I'm sitting in my lawn chair around a fire, eating somebody else's food. And I thought, I really need to be back in my bus. I need to be working. I need to be reading a book. I need to be doing something. And I do know I need to be social. And part of my plan out here was going to be that I was going to interview people for the podcast too. And I thought about interviewing them. And unfortunately, once I really started to talk with them, I realized how full of shit they kind of both were sometimes. And I know that doesn't sound very nice and it's not objective. And I guess I'm no journalist because, wow, it was a lot to take. And it was days of this. And then their relationship started to fall apart, and there was questions about the nature of their relationship and all this other stuff. And I didn't have the bandwidth for it. So I decided I'd peopled enough, and I'd seen everything that I wanted to see in Lake Havasu. So I wanted to see more of what was out here. And part of my goal was to be out in the Mojave Desert. I've wanted to come out here since 1998, when I wanted to drive out here for spring break and go camping. And I didn't do it because my landlord decided to knock on my door at 6:30 in the morning and dump his friggin' pug off on me for me to watch. And he shaved $200 off of my rent that month. And I thought, woohoo, this is great. I'm getting a deal. And honestly, that was a canon moment in my life where I should have gone on that road trip by myself. I think a lot of things in my life would have been very different. And it was just because I was being cheap. I mean, back in those days, I would work my guts out at my jobs and I wouldn't spend any money. And then if anybody said, hey, let's go do this or let's go do that, I would say, oh no, I'm a poor college kid. I can't do that. I don't have any money. And looking back now, God, I had a lot of money in the bank. I had more than I do now. And I wasn't doing anything with it. I didn't realize that there was wealth through experiences too. And they can't take away your experiences once you have them. So again, to kind of shill for my supporter here, if you are in any doubt that you need an adventure, you can get on booking.com and you can start your adventure right by finding a good place to stay and jumping off from there. It's not that hard. And I wish I would have had services like that back when I was young and back when I was just starting out, like in college. I probably would have gone more places. I used to go off of the old thing that my folks would do, where they would get the Motel 6 pamphlets, and it told you where all the Motel 6s were across the country. And that's basically how we went on vacations, was we would bounce from one Motel 6 to the next because, and I hate to say it, but my dad was very, very thrifty. And he loved the fact that it was only $29.95 a night for 2 queen beds in a room, even though the rooms were awful and they haven't changed much since the 80s. But I saw a lot of America back when I was a kid. I've been across California many times in my life, and usually in the middle of summer in the Mojave Desert, in my mom and dad's 1978 Bronco, which was brown, and they were saving some money and didn't get the air conditioner. So we're driving through the Mojave Desert in the middle of June or July with no air conditioning in a big brown vehicle in 110-degree weather. And back in those days, the idea of a road trip really soured me. It was like, no, I do not want to get in a car. And then you get to listen to your parents fight over who's reading the map and why they're not reading it right and all this other stuff. If you've been on a road trip with your own family, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a little bit different now that I'm doing it on my terms. Penny never complains about how the map is being read. Sometimes she does complain about my driving, and usually she's just sitting on the back in the bed, just panting the whole time. And then when my driving really sucks, or when she really starts to get nervous, she'll jump down from the bed and walk up so I can pet her as I'm driving, and then she'll go back and get on the bed, and she'll kind of bounce back and forth like that several times. So she's kind of a backseat driver, or back bed driver, if you will. But Yeah, it was. It's a whole different experience than when I was a kid, because I was talking with my dad the other day about Lake Havasu. I called him for Christmas, and he said that he thought that we'd been there before, and in typical Harris family road trip style, he said, "Yeah, I think we drove into town, and we saw the bridge. We didn't drive over it. We just kept driving through town." And there are so many places that I've been in America with my folks where we have blown right past something at 65 miles an hour, if not more. And I don't know if it counts that we've seen things. I had a conversation with my mom one day. I was looking at maps, and I remembered that we were staying in Lone Pine, I think it was, in California. And it was our midway point. We'd gotten all the way to Lone Pine, I think, in one day. It might have been the second day that we were driving out to California to see my grandma in San Diego. And we stayed at a Best Western hotel in Lone Pine. It was the upgrade from Motel 6 because they didn't have a Motel 6 there. And I think my mom was just sick of us being in the car and said, "No, we're going to stop." Do you hear my dog snoring? This is crazy. So we open up the door in the morning to load up and get back up on the road, and you can see Mount Whitney from the hotel, like from the front door of the hotel room. And it's this big pyramid of snow and trees, and it's gorgeous because we've just been through the desert. And back when I was a kid, I had no appreciation for the desert. I always thought mountains meant trees and snow. And here's Mount Whitney, and it's trees and snow. It's beautiful. And a few months ago, I was looking at a map, and I got pissed because I saw on the map that probably about a 20-minute drive from where we were was Sequoia National Forest, or National Park. I think it was the National Park even. And I would have to look at the map again to be sure. I was so pissed off because we were that close to that national park and we didn't even go to it. Didn't go near it. Could have seen the giant trees and everything else, but nope, we had direction, we had focus, and we had a time limit. And I don't travel like that. I usually set a goal for myself. Like when I was in Ireland, one of the goals that I set for myself was I'm going to get a cable knit sweater because I love those friggin' things. And so I thought, okay, well, my Airbnb is south of Galway, so I will just drive to, I thought about taking a ferry to the Aran Islands because they had the sweater mills there. And then I instead kind of knocked two things off my bucket list for that, and I found a woolen mill that you could actually see the Aran Islands from on the mainland. As mainland as Ireland can get. The whole thing's an island. But yeah, that's how I usually travel, is I set a little bit of a goal and then I go for it. And it's almost like when you're walking down the road and you kick a rock and you follow the rock and you kick the rock again until that place. So that's kind of my itinerary. If I see a pretty vista, I'll stop and I'll take pictures. If I see a sunset, I'll watch it go down. I'm not in any hurry out here. Sometimes I have to work and I sit down and I work. Sometimes I have to go get stuff and do errands and chores and clean the bus, and I'll set aside time to do that. But I'm not going to live my life racing up to a red light. I'm just going to take my time and enjoy my experiences and do a lot of thinking when I'm on the road and when I'm off the road. I'm going to live in the moment. And for me, that's kind of just where I need to be. It's where I've needed to be for a long time. And if people say I'm living the dream, then yes, that is living the dream. Living the dream does not include using public restrooms every time. It doesn't include showering at rec centers or outside of your bus, or sometimes just wiping yourself down with a hot washcloth. There's things that are not so glamorous about living on the road, and there are some things that I wouldn't trade for the world. I take sunset pictures all the time, and I post them on Facebook and Instagram. And I don't get sick of doing the sunset pictures, because even though it's just gorgeous every time I take a picture of these things, it's that moment. I get to live in that moment. I dated a woman that got me into smoking cigars a few years ago. And I don't smoke cigars anymore. I've got asthma and they really screw up my lungs. But the beauty of the cigar was that you pay $10 for one cigar, if not higher. And you are forced to sit down for 45 minutes and do nothing else but smoke that cigar and talk and drink whiskey or wine or eat cheese, have a conversation, stare into a fire pit. But you're not multitasking. You're not like checking emails. You're not, following up phone calls. You're not working. You are forcing yourself to sit there and just do nothing but smoke that cigar. That's your primary focus, and anything else after that is secondary. And that was a very neat experience. But I realized I can do that without a cigar. I just have to tell myself, no, you're just going to relax. You're not going to do anything. You're going to take some time for some self-care. And I think we're just so much in hustle mode that we don't really think about self-care anymore. And it's probably one of the most important things that we should be doing. Because people die of heart disease, they die of cancer, they die of diabetes, dementia, all these things that are rooted in stress and cortisol. And God knows I went through enough stress earlier in my life. I don't need to compound things. And I've actually heard a doctor tell me that yes, that the amount of cortisol that your body goes through when you're stressed out lends itself to other diseases and can really affect your health and your quality of life later on in life. So I'm not retired by any means. I know a lot of people out in the desert are retired, but I am working and I'm traveling at the same time. And I'm also learning how to take time to relax and just be in the moment. I hope you will too. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to shut up for the rest of the night and probably read a book that I bought at the thrift store today for pretty cheap. Thanks for listening, and